I took the night shift at a haunted cemetery in Portland, and uncovered disturbing secrets. I never should have opened that door. The old iron gates creaked like a warning as I passed through, the chill of the night biting into my skin. This was no ordinary cemetery. It felt different. Sinister. Shadows danced between the gravestones, twisting and turning like phantoms in the fog. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves that sounded like whispers. Was something watching me? I glanced around, my heart racing. Every night, I would come here to monitor the grounds. Dusty pathways wound through the plots, each gravestone held stories of lives long gone. They were mostly forgotten. Yet, something about this place felt alive, as if the spirits were restless. I could almost hear them calling out, their voices blended in a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. Tonight was different. The moon hung low, illuminating the damp earth. The cold seeped through my jacket, leaving me with goosebumps. I shivered. A rusted bell tolled somewhere in the distance. I kept telling myself it was just a bell, nothing to fear. But then I heard it, a soft, low humming from behind the oak tree. It was a sound I couldn't place, low and melodic, like something from a long-lost lullaby. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the rows of headstones, making the branches of the trees shudder. I squinted into the darkness. Was that a figure? I felt a pang in my chest. I stood frozen, my breath quickening. The movement became more pronounced, like a shadow slipping just out of sight. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. I needed to explore. I needed to know. As I tiptoed closer, something crashed in the distance. My instincts screamed to run, but curiosity pulled me forward. I stumbled over an uneven stone, narrowly catching myself. The air thickened, the darkness coiled around me, heavy and suffocating. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. My hands trembled. Then it happened. A soft rustling erupted from behind me. I spun around, heart in my throat. Silence fell like a shroud, broken only by the echo of my ragged breaths. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I wasn't alone, and just as I was about to back away, a figure appeared at the edge of the graveyard. I blinked. It was just a silhouette, too shadowy to decipher. But I could make out the outline of a face, pale, ghostly. My pulse raced. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling like the leaves around me. And no answer. Just the sound of my own heartbeat. I took a step back, ready to flee when the figure lifted its hand. My breath caught. In that moment I knew I was in deep trouble. A scream echoed through the night. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I stumbled back, my instincts screaming at me to flee, but my feet felt like lead. The scream, piercing and anguish, seemed to rise from the very ground beneath me. It clawed at my senses, intertwining with the whispers of the restless souls that haunted this place. The figure remained motionless, its hands still lifted in a slow, deliberate manner, as if beckoning me closer to an unseen terror. The shadows shifted around me, swirling like a dark tide, and I could swear I felt cold breath against the back of my neck. Turning slowly, I peered into the suffocating darkness of the cemetery. Each step I took felt heavier than the last, as though the earth itself was trying to pull me down into its cold embrace. I chanced a glance over my shoulder. The figure was closer now, mere feet away, its featureless face gleaming in the moonlight like a specter. I blinked, but it didn't waver. It simply stood, motionless and unyielding, its unblinking gaze bore into my very soul. Panic surged within me, overpowering curiosity. I turned to run, but instead of bolting back through the gates, my eyes caught sight of something that brought me to an abrupt halt, a broken headstone, barely discernible among the foliage. "Help me!" The voice was faint, barely more than a breath, yet it sliced through the suffocating silence. I felt my heart lurch. I had to know. Compelled, I approached. The headstone read Eliza Hart, 1823 to 1846. The dates blurred together under the layers of moss and grime, the epitaph obscured. I knelt down, brushing away the dirt. As my fingers grazed the surface, a chill radiated from it, seeping into my skin. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not just touching stone, but something far more sinister, a vortex of lost souls, their memories shrouded in anguish. A low moan rose around me, the very ground shaking in response. My heart raced, tearing at my restraint, as if there was a storm brewing within the earth itself. The shadows lengthened, their sinister dance closing in tighter. Fear enveloped me, a sentient being that urged me to run, but the memory of the figure's stare kept me rooted in place. I was trapped between the hypnotic call of the dark and the whispers growing louder in my mind. "Help me, help us!" Frantic, I looked around, trying to find who was speaking. The shadows teemed together like taunting ghosts, swirling, grasping at my sanity. Then, I felt it, a grip around my ankle. My pulse skyrocketed. Whatever force had tethered me was no longer a benign shadow. I stumbled back, yanking my leg free, but not before I met the gaze of what lay beneath the headstone. A face emerged, a decaying visage contorted in pain, eyes sunken and pleading. I gasped, reeling back, the sheer horror of the encounter making the world spin. Suddenly, the cemetery erupted into a cacophony of screams. Ghostly figures emerged from the darkened corners, rising from the ground like twisted phantasms. A legion of suffering souls, their faces distorted in despair as they clamored toward me, their cries merging into an overwhelming dirge that filled the cool night air. "Help us!" they wailed in unison, their voices scraping against my eardrums. The figure I had seen before stepped closer, its hand still extended, waiting for me to join them in their relentless torment. In that moment of paralyzing horror, the ground began to tremble violently, as if the cemetery itself sought to consume me whole. I could feel a presence encroaching from all directions, a dark void calling to me, promising eternal darkness if I succumbed. Without thinking, I turned and ran, racing down the narrow path. The grave markers blurred, twisted shadows clawed at my back, and I stumbled once more. Just as I regained my footing, a leather-bound book lay open at my feet, its pages fluttering in the gusts that swept through, revealing frantic handwritten notes, filled with desperate pleas for salvation. I snatched it up, heart hammering, when I heard it, a low laughter weaving through the air, chilling my bones and turning my blood to ice. It was coming from behind me, deeper in the cemetery, and I couldn't resist the urge to turn around one last time. A figure emerged from the darkness, utterly indistinguishable, but for the glimmer of malevolence in its eyes. It raised its hand, and in that instant I realized it was reaching out to me for help. It was beckoning the souls around me to follow. Frozen in terror, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet once more. And just as I turned to flee, something cold grasped my wrist with an unforgiving vice, pulling me down. The world around me twisted, and with a wrenching pull, I was dragged toward the heart of the cemetery, deeper into the shadows, and into the abyss of anguish that I had unwittingly awakened. And as I faded into the suffocating dark, I heard the whisper that sealed my fate: "Welcome home." The pull of the earth seemed unrelenting, an insatiable maw demanding my presence, and though I fought against it, terror rendered me powerless. My screams mingled with the sorrowful cries of the souls, becoming a part of their eternal chorus as I was dragged deeper into the suffocating darkness. Suddenly, I broke free, collapsing onto the damp ground, gasping for air. Panic coursed through my veins, but there was no solace in knowing I had escaped whatever horror had grasped my wrist. The shadows loomed around me, thick and heavy, as if they were sentient entities pressing me deeper into despair. I scrambled upright, vision blurred with fear and darkness, burdened by a sense of foreboding that wrapped around my heart like a vice. The book lay open beside me, its pages now fluttering erratically, urging me to look closer. I reached for it, a magnet to its morbid secrets, fingers trembling as they hovered above the jagged handwriting. Scattered pleas for help emerged like ghostly echoes, each sentence steeped in a weight of anguish. They mark you, they take you, once you see, you can't unsee. It all felt like a trap. A sudden rustle caught my attention, and instinctively, I jerked my head towards the sound. The figure from earlier, the one that had beckoned me with its empty gaze, stood there, its outline wavering as though it were both there and not there, the contours of its body shifting within a haze of darkness. I showed you their pain, it whispered, voice like rusted metal scraping against stone. Do you understand? The shadows behind it pulsed with energy, twisting and writhing as if alive, and my resolution faltered. I needed to get away, but my body felt sluggish, weighed down by the heaviness of buried histories and lost souls. The figure stepped forward, its hand extended with a haunting grace, illuminating its featureless visage under the pale moonlight. Instinct, the survival instinct, screamed at me to run, but curiosity rooted me in place, desperate to understand this world woven from torment and sorrow. I opened my mouth to speak, to plead for clarity, when the laughter returned, wrapping around me like a noose. It was no longer just one voice. The cemetery vibrated and resonated with them, a symphony of laughter that echoed off the gravestones, taunting, mocking. Then, without warning, the ground split open nearby, a deep crevice gaping like a hungry maw, and from within, tendrils of darkness slithered upward, seeping into the cemetery air. They writhed hungrily, crawling across the ground toward me. Drawn by the pulse of my fear, I stumbled backward, my heart thundering, each beat amplified in this realm of shadows. The book had fallen closed, the pages now flickering together, as though thousands of desperate souls were fighting for their escape. I willed myself to look back at the figure still standing in the distance, and in that moment I saw something I hadn't noticed before, a glimmer of a white mask resting atop its head, reflecting the moonlight like a ghostly sheen. Join them! It beckoned softly, the words rolling over me like thick fog, but not an invitation. The shadows responded, unfurling into grotesque shapes, remnants of the souls that had been snared here, silhouettes of horror dancing on the edge of my vision. Their mouths opened in silent screams, faces contorted in a blend of rage and desperation, clawing at me from the void. Then, a shriek pierced the veil, emanating from the fissure. It wrenched my heart, drawing my eyes down into the blackness. I stepped closer, as if pulled by threads of hope entwined in despair. What lay within that depth? Would I find escape, or join the chorus of the damned? Hands clung to my shoulders from behind, ghostly fingers digging into my flesh, as a mass of shadows surged forward, eyes aglow with the dreadful light of unfinished business. Do not resist! A voice shrieked, as I felt icy breath against my ear, a low growl promising devastation. The darkness grew thicker, an impending storm of despair twisting and writhing, but it was then I saw something. Fluttering on the floor, it was a torn page from the book. I lunged for it desperately, hands shaking as I reached, but before I could read the words, a deafening roar erupted from the fissure, and I was swept away into the vortex of shadows. The last thing I saw before being consumed by the darkness was the figure standing tall amidst the chaos, the mask glimmering with an otherworldly light. You want to know their secrets? It asked, its voice a twisted melody of sorrow. Then you shall become one of them. And just as I felt myself being swallowed whole, the laughter crescendoed, entwining with my own screams as I fell into the depths, knowing I was far from escaping the horrors that awaited me. The descent felt eternal, a merciless slip into a hypnotic void where time lost its meaning. The world of color faded into monochrome shadows, and the laughter dwindled into a haunting echo as I plummeted. I twisted and turned, spinning within a cyclone of lost souls, their anguished faces piercing through the inky blackness. Somehow, I could hear them whispers clawing at the edges of my mind, warning me of the fate that awaited. Then, the ground jolted beneath me as I landed on a surface so cold it sent shockwaves through my bones. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, gasping for the air I couldn't seem to find in this frigid expanse. Around me, the dark began to coalesce, revealing a dismal cavern suffused with an unnatural chill. I was enveloped by the fetid scent of decay, reeking of ancient sorrow and forgotten pleas. I pushed myself to my knees, heart racing under the weight of dread. The shadows formed a thick, indistinct fog, curling around me, drawing closely like forgotten memories longing to be remembered. I heard the distant sound of sobbing, a melancholic wail that resonated through the cavern, sending shivers down my spine. It was a sound that resonated with the deepest pits of my soul, as if I recognized the origin, as if it were mine. As I stumbled forward, I noticed that the walls were marred with scratch marks, remnants of despair etched into the stone like a terrible countdown. Desperate for light, I reached for my phone, but its screen remained dark, swallowed by the abyss. It might as well have been a relic of another life. Something flickered off to my left, a fleeting glimpse of translucent forms moving languidly, shuffling with a quiet resignation. I leaned in closer, my breath hitching as I discovered their appearance fragments of those who once lived, faces twisted in endless sorrow. They didn't acknowledge me, instead drifting aimlessly, as though lost in a realm they could not escape. Suddenly, the sobbing intensified, morphing into a cacophony of voices crying for rescue, their words slamming into me like waves. "Help us!" they begged. "Free us from this wretched place." With their cries clawing at the tendrils of my heart, I pressed on, desperate to find their source, each step heavy with the weight of their sorrow. As I turned a sharp corner, I saw a dim glow pulsating ahead, cozy yet eerie, nestled like a warm ember within the icy embrace of the cave. Hesitantly I approached, drawn to it as if by an unseen tether. When I reached it, I found a chamber ablaze with half-burnt candles, their flames flickering against the stone walls, creating grotesque shadows that danced to a rhythm only they could hear. At the center, a strange altar made of twisted roots and bones beckoned to me, the remnants of those who had once been consumed by this cursed place. Draped across it was an ancient tome, a replica of the book I had escaped earlier, its leather cover blackened with age and trauma. My instincts screamed to turn back, but a potent force of curiosity propelled me closer. As I reached for the book, shadows fanned out from the altar, wrapping around my wrists and ankles, keeping me tethered within their grasp. The laughter returned, vibrant and manic, rich with the flavor of insanity. Faces materialized in the shadows, morphing and contorting in horrific delight, nodding towards me as if I were their next offering. "Join us," they chanted in manic glee. With a surge of will, I tore my hand away from their grasp and grabbed the book, flipping it open to the first page, heart racing as I prepared to unearth its secrets. But the words danced and twisted before my eyes. Whispers enveloped me, binding me tighter, urging me to commit to the shadowy pact. Then I felt something shift behind me, a presence coiling in the dark, pressing against my back. The air thickened, heavy as if the weight of unseen eyes bore down upon me. A voice rasped through the shadows, its tones antiquated and shrill. "You shouldn't have come here." In an instant, the candles extinguished, plunging me into a paralyzing blackness that ignited every fear I ever held. The ancient book slipped from my grasp as I spun around, desperate to fight against whatever horror stood at my back. But the sound that arose was no growl, no threatening moan. It was a child's voice, sweet yet ominous, singing a melody tinged with madness. "Ring around the rosy," a pocket full of posies. I stumbled, feeling warmth pooling around my feet, an unsettling realization dawning just as I turned to face the darkness, a pulsating mass of shadow that was rapidly growing, feeding off my terror. Just when I thought I could find my escape, the song crescendoed, and the chamber began to tremble. An otherworldly burst of energy blasted through, forcing me against the wall, and in that moment, the shadows cascaded forward, writhing and twisting, coalescing into a form I could never have imagined, a mirror of myself with hollow eyes and a sinister grin. "Now you know," it whispered, voice echoing in a symphony of echoes from beyond the grave. "You'll never leave." And with that, the ground beneath me shattered, and I felt myself plummeting again, deeper into a realm I'd never wished to explore, the laughter echoing all around, drowning out all sense of reality. The fall felt unending, an abyssal descent where the weight of expectation crushed my thoughts, and the air screamed past me like a disgraced wraith. My body collided with an invisible surface, a sudden stop that left me breathless and reeling, wrapped in the suffocating embrace of darkness once more. I stumbled upward, trying to shake the disorientation, the echoes of manic laughter still reverberating in my ears. I was back in the cavern only now. It thrummed with a different kind of energy. The walls pulsed, as if they were alive, whispering secrets only the damned could hear. The dull ache of hopelessness settled in my chest, a cruel reminder of the last choice I had made. Where I rasped, but my voice was swallowed whole by the damp air. To my horror, I found myself facing yet another entrance, this one framed with jagged stone, flickering with an ethereal glow that suggested warmth but pulsed with unease. My instinct screamed at me to run, to flee deeper into the maw of the cave where the voices and shadows had grown silent. Instead, I felt an iron pull propelling me forward. Just beyond the threshold, a wretched sight awaited me. An expanse that could only be described as a grotesque carnival sprawled before me, a nightmarish landscape littered with faded remnants of long-forgotten celebrations. Ribbons twisted in despairing knots hung low, their colors muted, as if drained of joy by malevolent hands. A Ferris wheel loomed in the distance, skeletal and swaying, its eerie creaking sickeningly juxtaposed against the dulcet hum of a cheerful tune, a lullaby that clawed at my psyche. My heart raced as the grotesque figures of forgotten revelers emerged from the surrounding darkness, their hollow eyes locking onto mine. They moved with a puppetry grotesque, limbs outstretching in a grotesque imitation of dance, pulling my senses into their twisted performance. "Join us," they chanted, their voices a cacophony of delight and despair that intertwined, rising and falling like a tragic symphony. Spinning on my heels, I tried to retreat, yet an unseen force seized my shoulders, cold, clammy hands gripping me with a stubborn affection. Panic raced through my veins as I turned to confront whatever horror awaited. Behind me stood a towering figure wreathed in shadows, its eyes glowing like hot coals. It wore a face cloaked in straggly hair, utterly featureless yet endowed with a malevolence that sent shivers racing down my spine. In a voice that felt like ice-frosted tendrils wrapping around my heart, it rasped, "You brought them with you." "Who?" I stammered, bewildered as the world around me shifted, shapes undulating in a trance-like pattern. The dark grew thicker with every passing moment, coiling like serpents, seeking cracks to seep through. As if in answer, the figures around me contorted back, revealing their true forms, pale and twisted, mouths stretched impossibly wide to emit sounds that were less like words and more like ceaseless howls. They were broken remnants of how the carnival had once thrived and sparkled, now nothing more than harbingers of this damned place, dragging those in anguish into their cycle of despair. "You will become part of the dance," they shrieked, chanting the melody that echoed deep within the strands of my memory. Losing grip of reality, I stumbled back, but the cold figure's grip tightened, a taloned hand visibly forming from shadows, claws glistening with a slime that emanated dread. The singing grew louder, weaving through the air like an insidious mist, while the carnival gear began to creak and groan, shaking the very foundation beneath my feet. I snapped my head to my right, and there it was again, the altar I had escaped earlier, now adorned with fresh offerings of marred flesh, vibrant and raw. Tendrils of shadow gorged themselves upon the remnants, pulling pieces into the void, feeding on the despair that danced upon the edges of my vision. One of the ghostly figures approached me, hand extended, and I could see it more clearly now, a young girl with sunken cheeks and wide, pleading eyes. "Help us. Please look within." Before I could grasp the absurdity of her plea, I felt the ground quake beneath me. The carnival tilted, shifting as though in a death throe. Shadows flared, the figure behind me dunes, whispering incoherencies that wrapped around my mind in a chokehold. "You're one of us now," it hissed as its mouth split wider, revealing darkness infinite and terrible. "No!" I screamed as I fought against the pull of the darkness, but the spell of the carnival tightened, knots of dread reeling me back towards an eternal dance of despair. In my frenzied panic, I caught sight of the mirror in the shadows, the reflection of my own face twisted in an eternal scream no longer my own. "I'm not one of you!" I shrieked, yet my voice reached fewer and fewer ears as the figures closed in, a merciless tide of yearning souls clamoring for my essence. And just as I sank deeper into the abyss of their cries, I felt an unbearable weight on my chest, my own breath fleeing as the laughter resounded anew, mingled with the melancholic tune that transformed into a dreadful tune whispering my name. In that fleeting moment, a chilling realization tugged at the edges of my consciousness: the carnival needed a new So, and I might just be the one they had been waiting for. Then I fell once more, not into darkness but into encroaching laughter, echoing off caverns unending, dragging me into their malevolent play, my scream joining theirs lost forever in this sinister symphony. I crumpled to the earth as the laughter rolled over me, drowning me in a seething tide of despair. The carnival's grasp faded, and I was thrown back into the realm of darkness, the echoes of twisted joy devolving into deafening silence. I lay there, gasping, powerless against the unknown that had ensnared me. Shadows whispered like long-forgotten memories, taunting me with fragments of horror and hope. As my senses returned, I scrambled upright, the ground slick and cold beneath my fingers. My heart hammered as I recalled the faces of those trapped around me, their hollow eyes searching for liberation, haunted by the dreadful dance of their torment. I hugged my knees to my chest, trembling against the creeping dread that clawed at my mind, but I had to move. Something told me that staying still would seal my fate among the wretched remnant of the carnival. The dull ache of despair lapped at my thoughts, intertwining with the realization that this nightmare had no exit. I pushed myself up, stumbling forward into the veil of shadows that swirled just beyond. I hesitated at the glittering entrance I had initially crossed. The thin veil of light pulsed in and out like a heartbeat, flickering as if pained. But the shadows grew restless, wrapping themselves around me like a chilling embrace, forcing me to forge ahead until the grip released me at the threshold. Stepping through was akin to plunging into water, suffocating and disorienting. I gasped, emerging into a new chamber, this one serene yet sinister. An expanse of graves stretched across the landscape, the headstones cropped with eerie overgrowth, vines creeping like fingers beckoning from beneath. The fractured moonlight illuminated each name etched in the stone, every inscription speaking of loss, tears coaxing secrets from the soil. But the moment I entered, the air thickened with a suffocating silence, a void that swallowed even the slightest sound. No wind ruffled the leaves overhead. Even the ambience of nature felt stifled, constrained, as if the very earth was holding its breath. Then came the sound that broke the stillness, a shuffle akin to whispered regrets, drawing nearer. I turned to see a figure emerging, one draped in a tattered cloak that fluttered in an invisible breeze. Its features were obscured, yet a faint glow emanated from beneath the fabric, casting grotesque silhouettes against the gravestones. "Help us," it crooned, voice trembling like a fragile thread ready to snap. "We are the forgotten." A chill ran through me as I felt the gaze of countless spectral eyes locked onto my form from the darkness behind the graves. "What do you want?" I managed to whisper, though dread suffocated my words. "We linger here," the figure continued, stepping closer, its voice like brittle leaves scraping against stone. "Our stories seek a voice, and your choices breathe life into our shadows." Before I could react, the ground trembled again, a visceral pulse resonating through the soil, as ghostly hands clawed from beneath the graves, reaching for me. Faces emerged from the earth, pale, twisted remnants of those whose tales had long since faded into obscurity. They wailed with a haunting sweetness, achingly mournful, their cries rising and pouring over each other like a tragic harmony. "No! You can't take me with you!" I screamed, but yet again, the shadows pressed closer, the glowing figure beckoning me nearer. "You must listen, lest you join us. Your past holds the key," it implored, those hollow eyes shimmering in the moonlight, igniting a longing deep within. Hints of buried memories flooded my senses as the air thickened with nostalgia, the laughter of children, flickers of warmth long extinguished, echoing in the fragile recess of my mind. As I struggled against the gnawing urge to remember, I felt my foot shift on something cold and slick, a spade half buried in the dirt with a name hastily etched along the handle, Marlowe Kane. A rush of jarring recognition flashed through me. That name, familiar in a way that jabbed deep within me, resonated like a cracked bell. I had known this person, had known him. But how? My heart raced, desperation clawing at the walls of my memory as the figures closed in, coaxing the truth forth. Suddenly, a searing pain lanced through my chest, a spectral hand clutched my heart, tightening until I could scarcely breathe. "Unravel the binding, find the truth, or be forsaken among us," the ghostly figure rasped, its voice now a cacophony of tortured souls pleading for release. And amidst the storm of shadow and sorrow, I began to feel their memories surging into mine. A kaleidoscope of visions spiraled unchecked, unraveling a narrative I both longed to recall and dreaded to confront. Faces of joy and sorrow cascaded through me as thunder resounded above, the clouds twisting in ominous formation. Just then, as the shadows gathered, the ground bucked violently beneath me, and the spectral hands closed tighter, pulling me down toward the granite lips of the graves, their whispers mingling with the echoes of my own heartbeat. Help us, what was lost must be found or forever remain unbound. Then a blinding flash of light pierced the darkness, momentarily breaking the grip of despair, and I heard it, triumphant yet foreboding, a raspy whisper curling through the air, "You will find it, Marlowe, you will find it." And just like that, the earth beneath shattered, and I plummeted into a pit of swirling voices, the figures of the forgotten spinning around me, their faces contorting, pleading, demanding that I return to them or else succumb forever to the echoes of my own unfathomable fate. The world collapsed into a storm of colors and sounds, dissonant screams melding with the fading remnants of laughter. I was engulfed by darkness, every sense twisted in confusion, clawing to find stability in the tremors of inexplicable terror. Just as abruptly as it began, the chaos ceased, and with a sickening lurch, I landed in a new expanse, surrounded by an unsettling, unnatural stillness. I lay sprawled on damp earth, gasping for air as an insidious fog clung to my skin like a malignant shroud. The air tasted of mold and secrets long suppressed. With each shaky breath, the odor of chill and earth filled my lungs, urging me to regain my footing. I rolled over, grimacing as the ground shifted beneath me, revealing a landscape barren and twisted. As I stood, the surroundings came alive with an ethereal glow, revealing gnarled trees draped in crimson vines. Their branches curled like skeletal fingers seeking to snare unwary souls. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, engulfed in panic, for something, the shadows, the air felt alive and aware of my presence. A whisper snaked through the air, insidious and intoxicating. "Marlowe," it called my name, a dark echo in the stillness. My blood ran cold, my instincts screaming that I was being hunted. I stumbled forward, guided by a visceral instinct to flee, but the whisper grew threatening, winding around me as if pulsing from the very ground. "You cannot escape who you are, you must confront what you have tried to bury." Veering into the heart of this infernal grove, I came across decaying tombstones, their surfaces marred with strange symbols that twisted like dark secrets embedded in their very essence. One grave caught my eye, isolated from the rest. The stone was cracked, fragments scattered across the earth like the remnants of hope. It bore an inscription that struck my core: "Here lies Rosella, keeper of the lost." Rosella, I breathed, feeling a deep sense of connection to the name, as if a bridge had formed between my faltering heartbeat and the grave itself. The fog thickened, coiling around me, forcing me to my knees as the memories surged forward, fighting for release. A flicker of a face, soft yet haunting, shimmered in and out of my consciousness. Then came the laughter again, a buoyant sound twisted with malice, erupting from the surrounding shadows and flowing through the air like smoke. "Come play," it taunted, resonating deeper as if beckoning from realms beyond. "We're waiting for you." I surged to my feet, torn between dread and an inexplicable urge to answer the call. What if the key to my past lay within those haunting echoes? Suddenly, out of the veiled shadows, a form began to materialize, a lithe figure, face obscured, yet undeniably familiar. Rosella, or the specter of her, floated before me, her expression shifting with muted longing and sadness. "Help me remember," she whispered, her voice echoing with the anguish of centuries. "Discover the truth before the darkness consumes us both." But I knew instinctively she was not as innocent as she seemed. There was a flicker in her eyes, a tempest brewing, threatening to unleash chaos against which I was wholly unprepared. The shadows encroached, darkening around us, an impenetrable cloak that transformed the grove into a prison. The weight of my decision sunk into my bones. Learn the truth or test the depths of my own demise? In that moment, a ghastly chorus erupted, resonating through the starlit void, chanting words I could barely make out, each sentence sinking into my psyche like nails drawn across tender flesh. "Find the key, sacrifice will unveil the hidden door, open or be bound." My breath hitched as I caught glimpses of more figures' faces emerging from the veil, twisted in agony, their eyes pleading. Join us, break this cycle, or become one with us forever. They surrounded me, their voices an unearthly symphony that threatened to drown me in despair. Courage gripped my heart, yet it was swiftly devoured by the looming dread that hung in the air. I had no answers, only uncertainty spiraling deeper into the abyss. But maybe Rosella held the key, a fragile thread connecting us. Just as I moved forward, my foot caught on something. A shard of glass glimmered ominously against the dark soil. I knelt down, compelled to reach for it, and as my fingers brushed against its sharp edge, an electric shock coursed through my body. Suddenly, the laughter crescendoed into a deafening roar, surrounding me like a living thing, and the figures of the forgotten erupted into a frenzy, their eyes now blazing with unrest, shadows shifting into monstrous entities. "You should not have touched it," they screeched in unison. "Now you are bound." With eyes wide in horror, I realized the sharp glimmer of glass was more than a simple shard. It was the last remnant of a shattered past, and I was caught in a cataclysm that blurred the line between my fate and theirs. As darkness swirled violently around me, the insidious whisper returned, "Welcome to your reckoning, Marlowe. It's time to choose." Then everything went black, plunging me into a void so thick I thought I could drown in its silence, leaving me to ponder with every ounce of faith I had left what chilling choices awaited in the shadowy depths yet to be uncovered. The silence pressed in on me, relentless and suffocating. I drifted in the void, swallowed whole, lost among ghostly echoes of despair and forlorn cries. My heart raced, a furious drumbeat against the quiet chaos of nothingness. Was I dead? An uninvited soul lingering in a realm of torment? Or was I simply ensnared in the consequences of my own reckless curiosity? The darkness shifted, writhing with an energy I could feel rather than see. A pulse like a heartbeat thrummed beneath my skin, each stuttered beat suffusing the air with a sense of impending doom. I knew, instinctively, that I wasn't alone in this void. Something lurked, something with a hunger that gnawed at the edges of my reality. "Help me remember." Rosella's voice, muffled by the veil of darkness but laced with urgency, broke through the oppressive silence. The familiarity of her plea brushed against my mind, igniting a flicker of recognition. It tethered me to a fleeting thought, a memory quivering just beyond my reach. In the depths of that overwhelming blackness, a faint light flickered to life, coalescing into an ethereal form. It was she, Rosella, but more vivid now, shimmering with an urgent light that flickered with every sharp breath I drew. "They're not long in coming, Marlowe. You have to choose soon." The words felt laced with both desperation and dread. "Who?" I gasped, my voice barely piercing the thick veil weighing down my thoughts. "The forgotten," she hissed, as shadows twisted around us, drawn to her luminescence like moths to a flame. "They will come for you. A choice must be made, the key or your heart. Time is slipping away from us both." For a moment, my scattered thoughts steadied, honing in on the shard of glass that trembled in the shadows of my mind, the memory now intertwined with dread. It was no ordinary fragment, it pulsated with a forgotten power, a threshold between the living and the damned. I felt the pull of darkness weaving through my veins, thrumming against my consciousness like the clamor of 1,000 beating wings. Suddenly, the void began to fracture, spilling cracks of sinister light that crawled upward like tendrils of smoke. Within the shards, shapes emerged, distorted silhouettes, conglomerates of agony, writhing against the barriers of their own confinement. They reached out, mouths stretching in silent screams that pierced the void, a cacophony of desperation reaching for me. "Join us!" they cried through unseen lips, their voices an undulating whisper. "Don't turn away! You belong to us now!" Trapped between Rosella's mournful gaze and the grotesque figures clawing for my soul, I felt the ground beneath me shatter and reform a rift that mirrored my internal turmoil. "The forgotten? Sacrifices? What do you need from me?" I cried out, a plea echoing against the encroaching void. "The key," Rosella urged, her form flickering dangerously under the weight of swirling shadows. "You must unlock the truth. Embrace your past, Marlowe. It will save you." Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted, swallowing Rosella as her expression morphed from determination to terror. The sacrifice is your truth, do not falter. She screamed, the last vestiges of her light drowning in the gathering darkness. Heavy tendrils crept forward, winding around my ankles, pulling me deeper into the relentless chaos. You must decide. The chorus of the forgotten clamored. The key must be used to unlock the abyss, or we shall become one. In a surge of defiance, I reached for the glass shard at my feet. The air crackled, charged with anticipation as shadows surged around me, ready to consume. I had to act, before I was swallowed whole by the despair that threatened to unravel whatever sanity I had left. Suddenly, the darkness retreated for a fleeting moment, revealing a door before me, an ancient wooden portal, bound with silver chains that glimmered ominously under the weight of whispering winds. I could see blurry reflections in its surface, flickering images of my past, seeping into my consciousness. Then, within the distorted reflections, a face materialized, a face I instantly recognized as my own, but twisted in torment. It grinned back with an awful, gaping laugh that resounded within me, sending icy tendrils racing through my spine. Open it, Marlowe! The voices beckoned. Reveal the truth and claim your destiny, or be lost to us. With every ounce of desperation flooding my veins, I began to step forward, preparing to plunge into the secrets of my own darkness. But as I laid my fingers on the frozen surface of the door, it swung open, the air charged with malevolence as sharp flashes of light erupted from the void, illuminating grotesque faces emerging all around me, twisting and shifting like tainted smoke, and in that moment, I felt the ground beneath me erupt in chaos, and the shadowed figures whispered words that sliced through the darkness. The choice has been made, Marlowe. Welcome to your fate. As the chaos erupted around me, the door closed, leaving me in a vortex of screams, the promise of darkness tightening its grip, and the last shred of my sanity unraveling into the madness. The cacophony enveloped me, a swirling tempest of torment as shadowed figures clawed at the edges of my mind, their whispers merging into a singular, horrifying mantra: "You are one of us." I stumbled backward, the rough ground tearing at my skin, desperation forcing the air from my lungs. The door had vanished, leaving nothing but a void hungry to expunge me. The forgotten phantasms of souls consumed by their own anguish swirled in endless patterns around me, and I swayed in their midst, every breath laced with their anguish. Panic simmered into rage as I fought against the suffocating tempest, trying to scream, yet the words were strangled in my throat. I was more alive than I had ever been, yet trapped in a miasma of despair. How could I reclaim myself from this prison? Embrace it! Echoed the chilling chorus, seductive and menacing, as they drew closer, their forms emerging with each heartbeat, a dreadful congregation of yearning, festering and desperate. Your truth is what binds us. Pointers of icy fingers grazed my skin, bathing me in unholy fear, yet amid the chaos, a flicker of something I had tried to forget ignited in the depths of my soul. A memory long buried beneath layers of dread and reluctance surged to the surface, bringing forth the haunting visage of the cemetery I had once wandered, curiosity driving me deep into its crypts. I had seen things that day, things I thought I had escaped. Remember, Marlowe! A voice urged, not Rosella's, but familiar, coiled within my darkened conscience. The whispers and shadows have always hunted you. They're drawn to the secret you carry. And then I understood. The shard, the key, was not just a ghostly fragment of glass, but a gateway to my own buried truths. Every moment spent rifling through the tombstones and the ancient, inscrutable epitaphs remembered now, the chilling echoes of laughter wafting through the night air as I strayed deeper into the void of secrets. In a final gasp of defiant energy, I surged forward, fighting against the press of the forgotten who desperately obscured my memories. I plummeted through the swirling shadows, tossing ideas and screams back like a stone unearthing the grave of an unquiet soul. I refuse to belong to you. You can't have me. And in that flicker of rebellion, the darkness peeled back, revealing flashes of moonlight breathing silver cascades into my mind. A vision of the gravestones I had lingered over, the lines of ancient poetry etched into fragile stone, ignited something primal within me, yearning for absolution in my dark history. Suddenly, from the ether of shadows, the specters transformed, twisting into silhouettes that resembled the faces of those who had been entombed in the cemetery, their eyes glimmering with sorrow and madness as they bore witness to my equation of despair and defiance. "You think you can escape your truth?" they shrieked, their voices blending into a symphony of violent rage. What was buried must be unearthed. Before I could grasp my surroundings, a searing pain erupted through my mind, everything flipping, the world around me spinning in unfathomable chaos. Visions flickered like faulty film reels, showing glimpses of ancient rituals, whispers of names, and blood stains that dared to breathe to life beneath the stone-chilled moon. My heart slammed against my rib cage, a drum echoing against the wrath of the cemetery. A shadow lashed out, claws of darkness realigning themselves into a monstrous figure, a grotesque replication of me, with eyes that gleamed with malevolence, and a ghastly grin that split its face wide, dripping with the essence of pure horror. I looked upon this twisted doppelganger, my hand trembling as I recalled that day my deepest shame. I had desecrated the resting place of my ancestors. I had thought it was nothing more than a thrill, a reckless pursuit of secrets, until I realized I had awakened something that ought to have been forgotten. And now, as the amalgamation of my sin and shame melded into this monstrous reflection, it hissed, "You'll never escape." Just as the fragments of my memories began to crystallize, a light erupted in the distance, piercing through the gloom surrounding us. I turned, heart pounding, desperately wanting to escape its horrifying presence. Light was hope, perhaps my way out. But the moment I stepped toward it, I felt the ground begin to tremble violently. The forgotten shrieked in unholy announcement, their voices merging into a harrowing crescendo that rattled the very core of my being. "Come back!" they wailed, their tendrils stretching, grappling for my flesh. "You cannot leave us! The truth must be uncovered." The monstrous form lunged at me, and I felt its icy breath cascade over me, chilling my very essence. I was torn between the light beckoning me towards safety and the horror pursuing me with unrelenting fury, and amid that chaos, a single thought shattered through the cacophony: what if the past I had hidden wasn't just my burden to bear, but the only key to freeing us all? As the darkness threatened to pull me back, I closed my eyes, ready to embrace the truth for once, and in that wild embrace of horror and light, I whispered into the void, "I will remember." But just as the shadows were drawn to my proclamation, something, or someone, darted from the light, a figure half-formed and cloaked in shimmering energy. "No!" they cried. "Don't invoke that name! Not here!" But even as the figure reached for me, the earth split beneath my feet, and the ground yawned wide, ready to consume everything I had ever known, pulling me into the abyss once more. Be trapped forever. Their warning echoed in my mind as all went black. When I awoke, I was no longer in a void but surrounded by familiar air, cool, crisp, and smelling of damp earth. I was back in the cemetery, sprawled on the ground where it all began, tangled in the leaves and shadows beneath the oak tree. A gentle breeze rustled the branches, and the moon hung overhead like a watchful guardian. The cacophony of madness had faded, leaving an eerie silence in its wake, a silence that felt both comforting and foreboding. I pushed myself up, heart pounding, breath quickening. Was it really over? Had I escaped that nightmarish realm of the forgotten? I glanced around, desperate for answers, but the graves remained still and solemn, the specters of the past receding into the dusk. Yet everything felt wrong, the air thick with tension, as if I was being judged by unseen eyes, shadows lurking just beyond my peripheral vision. Taking shaky breaths, I stumbled toward the entrance, where the rusted gates beckoned like a long-lost friend. My hands trembled as I grasped the iron bars, pushing them open with a creak that echoed through the stillness, a sound of blissful relief, or one of imminent doom. I had to know. I needed to leave this cursed place behind, but as I stepped through the threshold, a sharp pain pierced through my chest, sending me tumbling back. Something pulled me down, a force familiar yet sinister, ghostly hands gripping my heart with malicious intent. The world around me began to shift, shadows converging, writhing as they formed a vortex of darkness that spun threateningly, hungry for revenge. "This isn't how it ends," a voice whispered from the depths of the shadows, soft and taunting. I looked up to see a figure emerging, a twisted version of myself, marred by despair and regret, eyes glowing with an insatiable hunger. You thought you could escape the truth you buried, the legacy that choked the souls of our ancestors? Your sins crawl beneath the grave where you left them. In a flash, the memories that had returned before my plummet rushed back, a nexus of faces I recognized, the cemetery, my family's legacy, filled with the souls I had wronged in my reckless curiosity. Rosella, the keeper of the lost, echoed viciously in my mind, a constant reminder of the sacrifices that tied me to this place. I had awakened them, and now, in this moment, they were awakened within me. You are bound to us, Marlowe, the doppelganger sang, its voice an echo of every soul I had encountered. The truth you sought has never left, it resides within. Behind it, the shadows danced like sardonic flames, hurting the remnants of tormented spirits as they began to emerge, figures once confined, now no longer bound by the veil separating worlds. Each one approached with pleading eyes, a community of the forgotten, not as wretched phantoms but as fragments of my past, faces that I knew but couldn't remember, memories ensnared in cobwebs woven by hands of desperation. It dawned on me as they encircled me, that every plea, every cry for help had been a reflection of my own unresolved guilt, and the darkness of my actions still tainted the graves of my own lineage. No! I didn't mean to, I gasped, desperation clawing at my throat. I didn't know you should never have looked for answers where none belong, the figure roared, the shadows thickening and twining around me, brushing against my skin with clammy fingers. You wanted to understand us, uncover our secrets, and you did only to flee as we were exposed. I fought against the spectral grasp, panic surging through me. I can help you. I'll do anything. Just please stop this. I was spiraling, torn between the aching need to reclaim my innocence and the suffocating knowledge that I carried their burdens within me, the weight of generations begging for justice. In that moment, I remembered the shard of glass, the key. I had to confront it, to reclaim the truth buried inside, the memories sewn into my very being. With every ounce of willpower, I marched forward, facing the shadowed figure. Let me show you what it means to be truly remembered. The insidious laughter echoed around me, wild and familiar as the ground beneath trembled. The shadows surged forward, snarling with rage, but I reached, desperately grasping the phantom shard that had been my tether to darkness. The moment it connected with my skin, a surge of energy coursed through me, illuminating visions long hidden. Images, memories, swirling up and crashing down like a storm, the truth unfurling in a kaleidoscope of light. There's no solace in rejection, there's only acceptance in pain, the specters murmured, their voices weaving a lament. Their liberation hinged upon my acknowledgement of their resting fate. And in this I realized, I didn't just hold their sins, I had woven them into my own. It was my journey, my burden to carry, and to reconcile their pain was my redemption. I am Marlowe Kane, keeper of your stories and your pains. I cried out, my voice raw, ringing through the shadows as their forms flickered, twisting in response. I embrace you, each whisper of sorrow, every ounce of despair. And with that embrace, I free you from the fears and regrets that bind us to this cursed place. With that statement, the shadows recoiled, momentarily casting aside the malignancy woven by our intertwined fates. For the first time, I felt light as the boundless energy surged around us, melding with the fragments of their tortured souls. The forgotten began to shift, liberated from their binding, the faces before me softened, each soul glowing as they recalled their final moments, transformed from forgotten to the beloved. But just as hope flickered and burgeoned, the malevolent figure laughed. You may have freed them, but you will never escape your own curse. You are still tied to the darkness you so ardently sought. And as the echoes of the forgotten began to fade, pulling me with them into another world that glowed fiercely with promise and despair, a bone-chilling thought pierced through the tapestry of light. They were free, but I was forever tethered, destined to remember what belonged to me. The seeker of truths would always be haunted by the shadow of knowledge unveiled. The breeze whispered, "This is not the end, Marlowe Kane, only the beginning." And with that I realized the ultimate horror. The evil I sought to escape lingered like an indelible mark upon my soul, forever entwined with the legacy of the forgotten. Their whispers rose with the howling wind as I was pulled deeper into the abyss of my own making, embedding a chilling truth in my heart: redemption may have freed them, but I would forever be their keeper. And I would remember, always,